Hi everyone, welcome to a quick update about Nio and most importantly as well Xpeng, because I'm starting to change my tune a little bit. I think it's high time for me, maybe for a lot of you guys, to at least consider to some degree to diversify your exposure to the Chinese electric vehicle market. I know that I've been following Xpeng for a long time, but I don't know actually for what reason I kind of been fully focused on Nio in terms of investments. But ever since, a few weeks back, I started to reconsider this because I think the fundamentals for Xpeng, pure financially, looks better. And I have to be honest with that. I love Nio. I think the cars are amazing. I do think that they are making, on average, better cars. But it's just about the facts. And if you look at the end of the day, Xpeng looks much more close to profitability than Nio at the current stage. Now, I could be completely wrong. As we enter Q3, remember that the Q3 numbers are going to be reported. For Nio, it's going to be on the 20th of November. So essentially 2 weeks from now. And then for Xpeng, it's gonna be one day earlier. I think it's gonna be on the 19th of November. It's gonna be. I'm quite confident that Xpeng numbers will be really strong. And for Nio, let's wait a bit. So if you look at Xpeng, you can see that their vehicle delivery in Q2 was 30,000 or thereabouts, and Nio essentially doubled that, almost 57,000. As the Q3 numbers came in, we can see that it's still a quite long distance between those, but I think in Q4 we might see a situation where they're essentially on the same level. Remember, we got the October number now, and actually expecting at 3,000 more or so deliveries. And remember, this is based on fewer models. And if you look at November, let's look at the weekly insurance numbers. We can see, so if we scroll all the way to November and October. So let's see here, we just only have, the first 3 days of November essentially. And Nio completely delivered 5,700 and Xpeng 5,400. So yeah, I mean, right now it looks like they're gonna be very even. Now, going to Xpeng again to the earnings report on the previous quarter, and there are some interesting facts. Remember that the gross margin was 14%, which was 12.9 in the quarter prior to that. And the interesting part for me here is how close to profitability they are actually. So you can see that last year on a non-GAAP net loss, this is remember in Chinese renminbi, so I think this number at 1.22 would be around 180 million US dollar or so in non-GAAP net loss, which means that this 2.67 RMB could be probably 450 or so million. It's a bit difficult since the numbers are not in US dollar, but you can see, yeah. So I would say a little bit more than the double. So let's say 430 million US dollars. So essentially, year over year, they decreased the loss by 54%, right? From 400 or so to 220. Now let's go for Nio for Q2 of 2020. Let's go for Q2 of 2024 and bear with me while I find a better way to visualize the numbers. I understand that these numbers there's a lot of them, so it's very difficult for you to see. But for a moment, bear with me. I'm gonna highlight it, at least zoom in a little bit here. Let's look at Neo's net loss, right? At 694 million. Let's say essentially 700 million. What number is that comparable to? Well, let's go to Q2 of 2023. And on that quarter, they were making a loss of 835. It's still an improvement, to be honest. It's definitely an improvement, but not to the same extent of, like Xpeng where they halved it. If Nio would have the same kind of, decrease percentage-wise, we could have seen here around 400 million net loss, but we saw around 700 million. So I think it's, for us Nio investors, sadly, it shows that the management, it might be that they are right in the long term, but let's be honest, if it was only that Nio would take a hit in terms of the stock market, right? Then you could argue for, there's a lot of, let's say, conspiracy theories on the Twitter where people think there's some shady stuff going on with Nio, and it could be true. I mean, there's definitely some weird stuff going on over the past 2 or 3 years. But then again, look at this chart and look at this section here, so the 52-week range, right? And we have to be honest again, don't get married to the stock. We are here to make money. Look at the 52-week range for Xpeng and look at the 52-week range for Nio. I mean, it's not even comparable, right? So, in my opinion, even now we can see that the market cap is larger for Xpeng despite them having less sales, right? So the price to sales ratio for Xpeng is a bit more, expanded. It's essentially more expensive stock wise, in my opinion, price to sales ratio wise. But that's not all. People look also as well on margins. And I mentioned that Xpeng made a net loss of around 180 million or so US dollar, I think. And that's significant for me because they are very close to profitability. And if you go again to this chart here and you look at the monthly deliveries, right? Xpeng is essentially going from 46,000 to well above 70,000 deliveries in Q4. So they're gonna increase their sales by, I don't know, like 60, 70%, maybe 80% in revenue wise. Would I put it past them to have increased their, let's say, margins to, I don't know, let's say they had a gross margin in previous quarter Q2 at 14, let's say 16%, right? And if you do the numbers, I think they will cut the net loss substantially. Like I think they are so close to profitability, and with the amount of cash they have on their hand, it looks better. Honestly, it looks better. Now things could change. Remember, Nio has many more models, and the whole battery swap stuff. Again, I've been telling about this. That's true. There's a lot of additional um, let's say benefit to the battery swap station, not doing only with the swapping itself, but again the warranty issues, 6, 7, 8 years down the line, with the choice that you can have in, maybe get the cheaper battery option with the shortest range, and then you can opt for, like, for 1 week or so, occasionally a few times a year, change to the longer range batteries, just because you can, and you cannot in Xpeng and the others. So there's definitely, of course, added value to Nio, and there is a very reasonable explanation why the gross margins could be higher without the swap stations at the current stage. But again, I'm not negative on Nio. I'm not turning negative. I just think, maybe you'll make a little bit more money if you at least diversify a little bit into Xpeng. Because my point of view in the electric vehicle market is that the Chinese are the real threat to Tesla, right? That's my point of view. But if you only focus on Nio, it might be the case that the CEO leaving, he's so focused on this grand long-term views and visions, where he kind of, to me, seems like he's forgetting that the most important thing is right now. And again, look at it like, if they need to raise capital, imagine the delusion. Like, we're gonna have the mother of all delusions if they decided to do another capital raise within 1 year or so. And I don't think they will, but I would not say it's unrealistic. They could easily do it. Like, if you go to let's go to the numbers for Neo, and if you just look at the cash position and my expectations that with each quarter as we go into the second half of next year, already by Q3 next year, they should be less than 3 billion on cash on hand. Again, it's not, bankruptcy dangerous. I understand that. But why is that? As I always go back to, why is that? Because remember, I started the video with this very good question from one of the guys that I follow about Nio on the Trader Chris. And they say that Deutsche Bank expect Nios net loss to, in the third quarter, fall 5% sequentially, right? So let's have a look and have a gross margin improvement of 0.3 points to around 10%. So if you go to Nios numbers now, so Deutsche Bank says that in Q3 Nio will improve their profitability, or let's say net loss will decrease by around 5%. But as my model says, around 3%. Now let's say I'm a bit maybe too conservative, but to be honest, you can see that according to Deutsche Bank, they expected gross margin of 10%, a 0.3% increase compared to Q2. I expect 10.8. So maybe I'm actually too optimistic. I don't know. I mean, it's difficult to know what kind of numbers they have and how much money they expect that Neo will put on, operating expenses, labs like SG&A, R&D, and so on. But bottom line is that, in my opinion, based on what we know right now, I think it's reasonable to change a little bit of your position into at least Xpeng if you're gonna do the EV route. And I think definitely both of these companies are gonna make life really difficult for Tesla. If you go back to the weekly delivery numbers, I mean, I just don't see, especially since Xpeng now again. Have you seen the new car? Xpeng secured 10,000 orders for like in the first 12 minutes, and this car looks to me fantastic. As you know, look at this interior. Look at this interior just based on this image, and compare it to the Tesla Model 3. There's no way, if everything else is fairly equal, I would not go for this one. And this one is probably a quite substantial amount cheaper as well. I mean, there's no way that Tesla Model 3 will sell well come next year compared to the competition. They will have issues. And again, we also have on the Nio front. Look at this here, Nio Firefly. They just launched Onvo, and very soon we will have Firefly, the even cheaper brand, or let's say sub brand. So no matter how you look at it, I think the winner here at the current moment, I think, although the market cap is now, I don't know, let's say 14 billion for Xpeng, right? But if you actually look at it, if you imagine that they have a revenue close to 2 billion or so. Actually, let's go to Xpeng's earnings and see what kind of guidance they gave. Business outlook. Oh, they only gave the revenue. Yeah, so around 10 billion RMB. I don't know how much that is. My assumption is around 2 billion or so, which gives you a yearly, let's say, revenue of around 8 billion. Let's make that 10 billion. Why did I say that? Well, because that's based on the current quarter, right? I mean, we do expect that Xpeng will sell more cars in, let's say 3 or 4 quarters from now on a quarterly basis. So I would not be surprised if Xpeng is selling 100,000 cars in, let's say, Q2 or Q3 next year. And by that time, they could have a quite clearly a 10 billion revenue run rate. And based on that, the price to sales ratio is still not that high. So I think we are, yeah, I'm actually thinking maybe change a little bit more of my Neo position to Xpeng for the moment. But then if the Q3 numbers of Neo surprises, even if it jumps 50%, at least we know for sure that they're going in the right direction. But I don't want to see, I mean, it's not the worst case scenario if they come in at the numbers that I'm expecting. Let's say that they reduce the net loss by around 3%. Would I be super happy? No. Would I be, getting scared that the company will go bankrupt? No, as well. But it's a middle of the road kind of situation. Sure, they're not, at least they're going in the right direction, but it's for sure very slow. Whereas Xpeng is, my suspicion is that they are doing the much faster route to profitability. And again, the biggest threat to the EV for Tesla is, in my opinion, the Chinese. And right now, other than Nio, BYD, and Xpeng, it's very difficult to invest in other companies. And I do believe that of course Li Auto, but it's much more a hybrid kind of play. Again, you could argue that the same for BYD, but for BYD, you're investing in the volume as well. But also, to be honest, even Xpeng is now looks like they might be venturing into hybrids. But that's my point of view. Yeah. So please like and subscribe, share our ideas, and yeah, I would love to see your point of view in the comment section. So thank you, and see you in the next one.